300 people here in the room, and I understand we have another 300 people watching virtually. So hello, everybody say hello to the virtual people. There we go. We're glad you're here. My name is Pam Ireland. I run our value management team at NetSuite, which probably nobody has a clue what that means. How many of you have heard of NetSuite and know what we do and who we are? About half the room. NetSuite is a company that provides financial software to companies of all sizes. We primarily focus on smaller, fast-growing companies, but we also have Fortune 500 companies as customers of ours. And we really have a suite of solutions that rounds out that financial core, including CRM and e-commerce and a variety of other things. My marketing person, Emily, hi Emily, I'm not going to use what you wrote because it's way too long and way too detailed. I will leave it at that. That's what NetSuite is and does. We're very glad to be a sponsor of this event tonight and of the CFO Leadership Council in general. The CFO Leadership Council, I think most of you know, was founded by Jack McCullough, who's our keynote tonight, and has been in existence for, I just realized, 13 years. The last 3 of which Jack is dedicated now full-time to this organization. And I think it shows, because this is the largest attendance that this group has ever had anywhere. So that is terrific. And I've been with NetSuite about 3.5, 4 years, and really just came to know the CFO Leadership Council since then. And I have been really impressed. I've worked with some of the chapters in other parts of the country as well. And this organization, the networking it provides, the educational and knowledge sharing that you all provide to each other and can take advantage of from the programs that they run, I really think is outstanding, and we're very pleased to be a part of it. So with that, you're all here to hear from Jack, so I'll turn it over to him. When we are done, we do have a raffle. We have some prizes to give away. We have 3 Kindle Fires to give away, and we have a leadership conference free pass to raffle off as well. So my NetSuite colleagues over here have a little basket to pass around. I keep telling everybody it's like church. We're going to pass around a basket, but you don't have to put in money. You just have to put in your business card. If you don't have a business card and you want to borrow one and write your name on the back, feel free. Mm-hmm. We understand business cards are not as common these days as they used to be. But if you want to enter the raffle for any of those prizes, the bucket will be passing around. Please enter yourselves for drawing, and we'll talk to you later tonight. Sorry. Oh, yes, and thank you. We recognize that the people on the virtual live stream might want to enter the drawing as well. So we have entered all of your names from the virtual list, and so we will have a virtual attendee winner as well. Thank you. Jack, all yours.
Excellent. Thank you, Pam. Really thrilled that NetSuite's part of this. I don't think most people are aware of this, but when we started the CFO Leadership Council a little more than a decade ago, we were just sort of an idea, just a few CFOs locally. And NetSuite was actually the very first firm that stepped up to support us. So I think it's fantastic. You were with us from the very beginning. You sponsored our first ever conference, and now you're sponsoring our first ever live stream. So thank you very much for NetSuite. And to be clear, all the food and drink you'll be consuming later has been paid for by them. So a couple of other people I want to thank, and I'm sort of hoping that they don't hate me at this point, but where are Kristen Todd and Caroline Boyce? So there's Kristen, our VP of Marketing, and Caroline is working. Our operations director came up from Philadelphia. So we've been working on this since December, and I kind of feel like I got you guys to do all this work under false pretenses. One of our marketing directors in Detroit, she actually recommended that we do a live stream. And I said, that's a great idea, and I told Kristen and Caroline we're going to do a live stream. Meanwhile, I'm going on Wikipedia to figure out exactly what a live stream was. And I thought, it's nothing. You just put an iPhone on a tripod and you've got a live stream. It'll take us 15 minutes. But as you can see, there's a little more to it than that. So I made you I didn't exactly lie, but I didn't really know what I was talking about. But thank you for not killing me throughout the process. I'm very grateful for your efforts. So I also want to welcome some of our guests, since we have a lot of our fellow organizations are here tonight. Is Christine from the Private Equity CFO Association here? So Christine, so thank you. The PE CFO is a group of CFOs just for CFOs of like private equity funds and venture capital funds and that sort of thing. So thank you for being part of this tonight, Christine. CGMA, Scott, in the back. Oh, there you are. And you'll be raffling off a free course tonight, right? Okay. A 2-year course, wow. So that's like getting an MBA. So, so they have some great courses. Make it a point to see Scott before you leave. IMA, I'm not sure, the leader of the group is not here. Is anyone here from IMA? So, okay, a couple of people. Thank you much for coming. And where is the living legend himself, Matt Budd? So, Matt, all right. So, never. So I don't know, we think so highly of Matt. I don't even know if you know this, Matt, but on our, the stand we have outside, your picture's on it. So, so anyway, that's Matt from the FANG. Thank you for coming up here. And where's Brian from the Construction Financial Managers Association? Oh, hey, Brian. Nice to meet you finally. So, Brian, you've got an event next week, right? It's at a winery? And what's the theme? Okay, so that, see Brian later tonight, and he'll tell you a little bit more about the event. But it seemed like a good program, and it's a winery, so that's good for this audience for sure. So thanks for being here tonight, Brian. And where's Brett from the Treasurers Club? Hey, Brett. So this is actually the second time you've sat through this presentation, isn't it? God love you. Anyway, so Brett is the current president of the Treasurers Club, and a great guy. So Brett, thanks for bringing your group here tonight. So with that, I think we will get into the presentation. Oh, good, the clicker works. So before we begin, let's try to keep this interactive. For one thing, I'm fighting off a cold, if you can't tell. So if, if you guys have some questions, feel free to ask them. Although, actually, I've been asked to hold the questions to the end. Also, just a little caveat, I'm not a professional academic. I interviewed, to create this presentation, I interviewed 40 CFOs. But if I tried to get this presented as a paper at MIT or Suffolk, where I went to school, I don't think they'd find it very compelling. But that said, I think there's some really good research here that I've done, spoken to some of the best CFOs in North America, and I think and hope that you will find it very compelling. And then finally, the presentation is available after the program. We will send you a link where you can download it. So it's something like 32 megs, so I can't really practically email it to 300 people. I would not make a lot of people very happy. So tonight's agenda, we're going to give a brief history of the evolution of the CFO. It's a position that actually started within most of our lifetimes. Then we will get into the meat of the presentation, the actual 10 habits of highly effective CFOs. And then a part that I'd like to get interactive with is how to become a highly effective CFO. I have some ideas on that from my research, but also there are a lot of very accomplished CFOs in the room tonight, and there are also some future CFOs and from first-time CFOs. So hopefully the veterans can sort of help the rookies a little bit through the wisdom of their experiences. So. Okay, a little bit about me. They say when they teach you to make a presentation, establish credibility first. So, and not having this click doesn't help, does it? So I basically, for the CFOs of my generation, I have a very classic traditional background, both a CPA and an MBA. I worked for 3 years with KPMG back when it was Pete Marwick and Mitchell. Hey, Ed, thanks for coming. And then I went back there for 5 years later, so I did eight years with KPMG. And then after that, I was 5 years as a controller. And then I became a CFO, and either on an interim or part-time basis, I was I was a CFO for 26 different companies during the course of my career. I worked for 30 CEOs, 35 CEOs during the course of that experience. Some were great, some were lunatics. I learned from all of them, if nothing else. And I experienced all 4 types of exits. So, and this is always a good question. How many people can identify? I only know of 4, so maybe there might be more. How many exits can you all identify by name? Yeah, okay, M&A, I'll say. Fair enough. Okay, that's 1. 2. Bankruptcy's 3. And what's the 4th? The 4th that I experienced, which I didn't know existed. Indifference. The founder, I won't say who the founder is because he's known here, but he had a net worth of about 50 million, and he was a relatively young guy. Started a company, and then I think he realized that he had a net worth of 50 million, and he was a relatively young guy, and he didn't want to work anymore. So he owned the entire company. He just shut it down. That was awkward. He just, yeah, I'm not going to come. Can you shut things down? So, really? So anyway, all of our experiences make us who we are, right? So, and then of course I'm the founder of the CFO Leadership Council. So, and also many of you attended the MIT Sloan CFO Summit. In fact, that's probably where I know many of you, and I'm the founder of that conference as well. So, that said, a little bit about our group. So our mission is simply to empower CFOs. We do this through a combination of cutting-edge professional development programs and also, frankly, the relationships that you guys form with each other. We found our programs are great, but there are a lot of great programs in the world. We think that the relationships that you'll be making as a member of the CFO Leadership Council or just attending one of our programs are invaluable. So I hope you'll all stick around tonight, network and mingle. After my presentation, you probably will need a couple of drinks, so we highly encourage that. Also, the focus of our organization, people do ask how maybe you're different from some other groups, and a lot of great groups out there. We, on average, focus on the people side of being a CFO. We have a lot of programs on building a relationship with your board of directors, working with millennials, building high-performance teams, things like that. So that's really our area of expertise, and it's what our members seem to like best. Founded in Boston, where now we have 23 chapters across North America. We're adding 4 more later in the year, so we'll be up to 27. I think we're coming to a halt. I'm just not sure that I want to be spending time in places like Louisville, Kentucky to launch a 28th chapter. But we're in most of the big cities across the country. So anyway, let's get into a little history of the role of the CFO. So the role is actually less than 50 years old, and it's experienced some dramatic changes. It was actually founded by Harold Janine of ITT. How many people have ever heard of ITT? Okay, I'm surprised. That's actually the most I've ever gotten. ITT was actually the first conglomerate. Harold took it from something bigger than a mom and pop, but not much bigger. And he actually, under his leadership, it grew to be a Fortune 10 company at one point through roll-ups and things. He was a very innovative guy. If CFOs had a patron saint, it would probably be Harold. That said, Harold was anything but a saint. He inspired a TV, a season-long arc on the TV show Dallas. Some of you remember that show from the 70s. But there was an entire season where J.R. Ewing actually, he overthrew a government the government had taken over the oil wells, and J.R. Ewing plotted and successfully overthrew the government. There was contacts at the CIA and other clandestine organizations. Harold actually did that in real life. He actually had, in Brazil, they were running the telecommunications operations in Brazil, and the government came in and nationalized it, which of course was a disaster for ITT. So Harold had friends at the CIA, and he had some revolutionaries in Brazil. He actually funded them, and basically a military regime took over from a democratically elected government. So he was an interesting character in history, to say the least. And you can Google him and stuff like that. He comes up quite a bit. So anyway, so Harold, under his vision, he created the modern CFO, but a lot of the role was still what today we would consider some of the old skills of a CFO. Financial reporting, compliance, expense management, forecasting. Things that today maybe you associate more with a controller than a chief financial officer. So, and then in the 80s and 1990s, deal-making expertise and a global vision became paramount. Although global vision was a little different, even at that, it was a lot of times it was simply tax strategies. It wasn't really, global expansion as much as what's the low-cost place to go, how do we enjoy the benefits, that sort of thing. So, and then in the late 1990s with the dot-com era, it became paramount that CFOs know how to raise capital, and they became very, very good at it. So, and then more recently, in the 2000s, what happened, the dot-com crash around 2002 came along, and that changed the role of the CFO in contradictory ways. What happened, how many people remember Sarbanes-Oxley or have dealt with Sarbanes-Oxley? And how many people like it? So, oh, Matt Budd, wow. So anyway, so what happened with Sarbanes-Oxley, there was a focus, again, on those old school CFO skills. So it was a lot of compliance and reporting and stuff like that. So, however, another dynamic happened. A lot of CFOs were actually sort of talking about things up front in a very candid manner, and no other executives were. They were saying, you know, hey, it's great that you're valuing my company so high, but you know, we did $9 million in revenue and lost $30 million. Do you really think this business is worth $2 billion? They were the ones asking the questions, and no one ever was. So despite it being a financial crisis, CFOs actually emerged with a better reputation than they had before. And also, one of the requirements of Sarbanes-Oxley was that audit committees had to, for public companies, actually have to interview and vet CFO candidates. So again, after the recovery, they emerged with increased respect due to their forthrightness and their business acumen. And that's continued to serve them very well. So, and then what I would call the role of the modern CFO, they continued to garner respect and visibility. And again, there was a financial crisis in 2008. And again, it was financial, so you might think, well, CFO's reputations are going to suffer. They didn't. CFO's reputations improved because, again, they were thought of as the straight shooters and the people who tell you what it was. And on Fox Business Network, Dagan McDowell, she's the southern one, very sassy, outspoken woman, and she, in her colorful way, which I won't repeat, but she basically said she didn't really want to hear from the CEO of a company. She didn't believe a word unless the CFO signed up for it. And that mentality, you know, a lot of people thought that on Wall Street and in the business community generally. And so again, financial crisis, CFOs are thought of as very reasonable, seasoned people who can communicate it effectively and who you could rely upon. So again, the reputation of the CFO continued to grow despite a crisis. So, and that's the history of the CFO. Oops, I'm going the wrong way. So, I was going to say, I think I left out a bullet there. Yeah, the other thing, at one point about 20 years ago, 80% of Fortune 500 companies had chief operating officers. And now a lot of those responsibilities are being assumed by chief financial officers. So there's only about 15% of the Fortune 500 today have a chief operating officer. It's a role that's being phased out a little bit. And there's a saying that you've heard a little bit recently, controllers are the new CFOs. And there's a lot of truth to that. A lot of the old CFO skills are actually being done by the controllers these days. They've taken on and been very successful taking on increased responsibility. That's allowed CFOs to almost be a combination of CFO, Chief Strategic Officer, and Chief Operating Officer. And then there's also Chief Accounting Officers. A lot of public companies have that, and some of them even have Chief Compliance Officers. Any Chief Compliance Officers here? No, good, okay. So I can say that sounds like a dreadful way to make a living. But, but no offense if someone is here. Oh, geez, we're on stream, so I might have offended somebody. So. Anyway, let's get into the actual 10 habits of the highly successful CFOs. So we can go through that quickly. Yeah, the woman who designed this PowerPoint for me, those who know me know that I didn't do this. We kept fighting because she, you know, I asked her to, you know, put pictures of people. She thinks that woman and the guy on the next slide are old enough to be CFOs. I think she looks a year out of college, so maybe I'm getting old or something. But it was a constant source of fighting. She actually, there's one slide later I'll show you that someone she thought was my age. But anyway, so what are the 10 habits? Yes. Remind me when I get to it. You'll probably figure it out. So anyway, the most habit, think strategically. They also communicate proactively. And in this case, the adverb's probably the important word here. Anyone can communicate effectively, but it's the proactiveness and the forthrightness. They are master deal makers. They are notorious for building elite teams, not only in the world of finance and accounting, but throughout their organizations. They learn continuously. Yeah, this guy's at least 25. So, they serve as a trusted advisor, and in this context, I'll primarily discuss their relationship with their boards of directors who've truly come to rely on CFOs. They perform cross-functionally. Again, it's not just a finance and accounting gig. They literally work in every function across the company. Other than arguably the president and a senior VP of HR, they have the most cross-functional job in the company. They maintain financial expertise, which is sometimes it's controversial. I've had a few CFOs say that skill's overrated, so we'll talk about that. And they provide ethical leadership. Ethics is going to come up a lot in this presentation. because it came up a lot in my interviews with the CFOs, but it was, to them, it was the most important thing that they could bring. Even if they screwed up everything else, as long as they had an ethical shop, they were feeling pretty good about themselves. And then finally, and perhaps most surprisingly, they maintain a healthy work-life balance. So I'm going to get some water. I need to announce that, so. Now I'm going to put the cup down. So they think strategically. So the expression's been used quite a bit, and I don't think many CFOs will be surprised to see me leading with it. But CFOs have truly become a partner to the CEO. It's a very important relationship. In fact, the consulting firm Accenture recently did a study on the dynamics of effective companies, and they concluded that the single most important relationship was the CEO and the CFO. And if that was a dysfunctional relationship, which doesn't mean they have to agree on everything, just that they respect each other and can work for the greater good when they don't agree, the company basically has no chance of being successful. It was literally the most important relationship. So be a strategic partner, be a sounding board, challenge the CEO when it's appropriate. And one of the things that they emphasized a lot, we live in a world, and many of the CFOs I've interviewed were from public companies. So we live in a world that we can't ignore the short term for the long term completely, because your stock pays a penalty for that. You can build for the long term, but if you have a bad quarter, you might lose a lot of goodwill with the investment community. So CFOs, they felt that they uniquely on the management team were the ones that were able to balance the long-term strategy, and you can't ignore that, with the short-term needs. And think beyond the next quarter. Hey, how you doing? So and whatnot. So understand missions, goals, and objectives. And this was an important thing. There used to be, at the start of my career, and I did start as an auditor, but a lot of times auditors and accountants, it wasn't exactly a flattering analogy, but we were compared to the guys with the bayonets that after the battle was fought, they'd come and stab the bodies to make sure that they were really dead. Not a lot of value add, but right now, CFOs are charged with understanding mission, goals, and objectives of everything, and also articulating it to the rest of the company. So, and then, be a CFGO, not a CFNO. It's just a different mindset on how I approach things. How many people have heard the phrase CFGO? Yeah, so, and CFNO? Nobody. I'm going to boast a little bit. I came up with the phrase CFNO, I'm pretty sure. It was my first job. I was a sophomore, maybe a junior at Suffolk University, and I had an internship, and I won't say where because the guy's still working, and I don't want him to sue me. But he wasn't a bad guy, but he just said no to everything. It's like, can we change the brands of coffee? No. Can we move the copier? Can we do this? Everything was no, no, no. So I started making fun of him. I called him the CF No. And he found out about it, and I was like, Jesus, that's the end of my accounting career. So he called me in the office, and he's like, Jack, I understand you've been calling me the CF No. I'm like, yeah, I'm sorry. He's like, he was very flattered, and then I figured out he was spelling no, K-N-O-W. Yeah. He thought that I thought he was extraordinarily knowledgeable on things. And so anyway, like 4 years ago, I gave an interview with the Journal of Accountancy for reasons I don't understand. But I relayed that story, and the guy read it. And he called me, and am I the CF? No? I'm like, no, that was someone else. So, so anyway, so that's my claim to fame, that I invented the phrase CF No. So anyway, elite CFOs, they take an active, not a reactive stand and approach to their roles. And keep in mind, unless you're president of your company, if he or she is a former CFO, you're the only one who can blend the financial and strategic expertise. And that's invaluable in any decision making. Don't underestimate it. It's what you bring to your company. It's what you have to bring to the company. It's your responsibility to make sure that you're understood. So that was habit one. Habit two is they communicate proactively. And CFOs, I mentioned earlier, I'm going to talk about ethics quite a bit. But CFOs are the most ethical person within their organization. They're charged with setting the ethical culture. And integrity, of course, it's a wonderful personal virtue that we should all aspire to, but it's also an organizational strength. There have been a lot of studies that show companies that actually have a true ethical culture perform better in the long run than those don't. Stockholders don't really like to invest in companies that aren't ethical. You know, if you're thought of as somebody that's polluting the environment or committing financial fraud, probably a lot of people aren't going to invest in that company. So it's truly an organizational strength that you're responsible for growing and protecting. And this is all about forthright communications. When there's bad news, you have to get it out very quickly, and you have to get it out accurately as well. And all details are shared immediately. One thing that came up is the high emotional IQ that CFOs have, and not one of them told me that they had a high emotional IQ, but just from my conversations, you know, I've taken enough courses on emotional IQ to recognize it when I see it. And, you know, there's a lot of empathy and sympathy that came out of CFOs, and I think it serves them well as leaders. And Kristen and Caroline, would you agree I have a phenomenal emotional IQ? Like off the charts? Like the Sir Isaac Newton of emotional IQ, that's what you've called me? Thank you. So, but no, it's a valuable trait in any leader, but it was perhaps a little bit surprising that, you know, CFOs, you know, embraced it as much as they did without using the term. And oops, did I go too much? So, nope, okay. So anyway, yeah, so communications, they need to be timely, clear, brief, and above all, truthful. And not all the time, sometimes compelling. Usually you can leave the compelling stuff to the sales and marketing of the company president. But there was a guy on the news, he spoke about the no spin zone. I forget who it was one of those crazy cable guys. But that's what the CFO is, the no spin zone. So a great communicator should sell influence internally and externally, build consensus, navigate politics, and manage personal agendas. Show of hands, how many people have politics in their company? So about 100%. So, okay, good. Again, we're free from that, right, Caroline? None. Yes, thank you. So, okay, CFOs, master deal makers. Again, they're no longer the guys with the bayonets. So, CFOs are involved in literally every single major transaction from the beginning, whether it's an IPO, an M&A, joint venture, an OEM deal, or raising capital. Nothing of significance is going to happen in any well-run company without the approval and understanding of the CFO. Again, they understand both the financial and strategic objectives, and they articulate that to the rest of the management team and the board. And not only the old days, they identified risks and opportunities. In the old days, they used to just negotiate final terms, but now they're actually identifying the risks and the opportunities, articulate them, making sure that things are understood. And they focus on, you know, creating the opportunity. And one CFO I spoke to, she was I'm going to say Fortune 2000-ish type of company. She said it was almost like a light bulb went off in her mind. Instead of being a problem solver, she did focus on, okay, there's a problem, that's great, but let's find an opportunity here. Let's focus on creating opportunities, just not solving problems or identifying problems. She sort of changed that approach in her way to transactions, and she said it changed the game entirely for her. It was just a little switch, like flicking on a switch, but it changed her approach to business generally, and it served her very, very well. So it's worth repeating, be a CFGO, not a CFNO, but as Theo Epstein used to famously say, well, he probably does still say it, but sometimes the best deal is the one that you don't make. So, you know, while it's great to be a CFGO, sometimes we need to be the adult in the room, and yeah, this seems awesome, but let's put on the brakes and make sure that it's the right opportunity for us. Don't just go along. Okay, and then CFOs are builders of elite teams. How many people right now are struggling to hire in their company, either within their own department or company-wide? So, okay, that's actually about half, so that's actually a little less than I'm used to. So, but if you believe the business press, and you can't pick up the business press without seeing an article about the war for talent or something like that. But if you believe the business press, it's the single greatest organizational challenge companies face these days. And in point of fact, during these conversations, that's what I was told over and over again, too. And, you know, why is it so tough? Well, small organizations are pretty complex from the word go. Startups from day one are thinking about how to expand on a global basis. There is the multi-generational workforce to deal with. By the way, Generation Z is graduating from college this spring. So we've got a whole new generation coming to wreak havoc with the workforce. And there are more of them than there are of us. There are more Xers in the workforce, and soon there will be more Zers in the workforce than baby boomers. So just something to look forward to. So I'm lucky I'm retiring when I am. So, but the other thing is we have like some historically strong opportunities for young people, and they're just being wooed all the time by your competition or just other companies generally. So keeping them is very, very difficult. So another factor, HR reports into the CFO in more than 70% of companies. By a show of hands, how many people have HR reporting into them? Okay, so a little less than 70%, maybe about half. So, but it's truly cross-functional, and some CFOs have told me their stories. It turns out CFOs think, and I don't think they were saying this in any boastful way, but they're actually probably the best recruiter in their own organization. And there was a CFO with the Silicon Valley company. I won't mention it, but I guarantee 100% of you have heard of this company. He was the CFO when they were a startup, and they were trying to land a handful of critical engineers, just couldn't do it. The talent wars are pretty bad in Boston. They're a lot worse out in the Valley. And he said, okay, let me do it. I'm gonna take 5 of these candidates out to lunch for a few hours, and these unrecruitable engineers were recruited. And the reason that they think that they were successful is A, it was flattering to the candidates that the CFO would come and give so much time. They felt important that the CFO was taking them to lunch. And the other thing is, again, CFOs simply have a reputation for being credible, honest, and trustworthy. And they said, look, if the president or the VP of sales or even the VP of engineering had stated the exact same case, they may not have been as believed as I was, because I walk into the room immediately credible. So that makes you a very powerful weapon in recruiting. So I'd recommend, if your company's struggling even outside of F&A, get involved in that process. You'd be surprised at how easy it is to make a difference. So, and the main thing they do, they recruit, they retain, they motivate, and lead. Kristen, how are you doing for time? Perfect, wow. So, wonderful. And the advice I got over and over again is to build your team for where you're going, not where you're going, not what you need today. So when you're hiring people, sort of look at where your company's likely to be 3 years out. What changes are going to go, growth, new technologies, whatever it might be. And even if you're hiring people, even if they don't have the skill today to do that job, look for people with the aptitude, look for people with the passion and the work ethic who are going to want to learn, and you're going to want to build a world-class organization with. Think like 3 years out is what I was told generally. Now, according to some surveys, that the average tenure of a CFO is only 2 years. So, but just think how happy your successor will be you took that approach, right? So, but, okay. So learning continuously probably shouldn't be a surprise to anybody in this room that CFOs learn continuously. But they're very intellectually curious people by nature. They're always trying to learn, and that's what serves them well. Today, there are a lot of very formal educational programs out there. Back in, when I was a young man, if you wanted to get an MBA, you could go part-time, and it would take, 5-6 years while you're working full-time. And, you had very limited options. It was very inflexible. The classes offered on Tuesday and Thursday, so that's when you had to be there. Or you could go full-time, which is what I did. So today it's a lot different. There are a lot of programs that are actually geared towards the work-life challenges that executives have, so you can take programs on the weekends, you can take them virtually. It's a lot easier to learn an MBA than it ever has been. A lot of the excuses of not getting it, which were very real, by the way, are gone now. There are a lot of, even if you don't want an MBA, there are a lot of live and online courses that are tailored to your industry, and you should be taking those to understand the trends in your industry and make yourself more effective in your role. The other thing, peer networking is paramount. As great as courses are, probably one of the best ways executives can learn is from each other. So, hopefully tonight you'll get to meet some people you never met before, but find some commonalities. It doesn't mean you have to work in the same industry necessarily, but, find people that you like, that you trust, and you can build a relationship with, and network with each other, learn a little bit from each other, enjoy the benefit of their experiences. And we have, the CFO Leadership Council has a group, we're now calling it CFO Connect. But it's an email group where a CFO can send challenges to their organization, to the Gmail group, and there's, I think, 1,100 CFOs are on it. So any challenge that you might be facing as a CFO, There's somebody that's been through it before and can help you get through it. And a lot of members tell us that's the most important part of the membership. So, something like that, networking with your peers is very, very critical. And then find a mentor. And this is one of those things, a lot of people don't want to find a mentor because they think they're really good at their job, or finding one, admits that is an admission that maybe you have a weakness. But as my dad once said, Ted Williams had a hitting coach. And, Tom Brady has a quarterback's coach, and he's the GOAT. And I'm saying that for people in Los Angeles. So, they're getting a little tired of my emails. So, no matter how good you are at your job, and you could literally be one of the, 10 best CFOs in the country, it doesn't mean you wouldn't benefit from a mentor. And a mentor could be anyone. There was a woman I spoke to. She was a divisional controller. She's now a CFO of a decent-sized company. But she told me the first mentor she had was actually the VP of sales in the company. And I thought that was really weird. And I said, why didn't you, look for a CFO or someone like that to be a mentor? And she said, truthfully, she knew the finance and accounting part of being a CFO better than most CFOs. She didn't really need to learn that. What she thought might separate her when she was ready for a CFO role was a customer focus. And, always thinking of what the customer needs are. And who better to learn from than a well-respected VP of sales? So the mentor may not be an obvious person if it's just a person who's interested in your career growth and who has some expertise that you can benefit from. Consider them as a mentor. So more and more people are hiring coaches. If you can afford something like that, that's great. A lot of the members of the Leadership Council are with early stage companies, and that becomes a little bit non-affordable. But if you've got that kind of money, they can also bring tremendous value. And then technology is ever-changing, and it's really easy to be a dinosaur before your 30th birthday. So if you don't know what blockchain is, and more importantly, I think you probably all know what blockchain is, but how it impacts your company, and chances are it's going to, you need to learn that type of stuff. I recently thought machine learning and artificial intelligence were the same thing. Oops, they're not. That could have been a big mistake if I was CFO. So, make sure that you're up to date on the technology trends. It's exciting to follow them, but you don't want to be someone who's, outdated before their 40th birthday. So, and then it's impossible to remain on the cutting edge of your profession or industry in a cocoon. You need to challenge yourself continuously to improve your toolbox. And number 6, serve as a trusted advisor. And again, I'm going to talk largely about the relationship that you have with the board of directors. And now, again, boards are very actively involved in interviewing CFOs. If it's a public company, it's actually a requirement under Sarbanes-Oxley that boards actually approve the CFO. And it's just a good practice, even if it's not a public company. How many of you, in your current or a recent CFO job, were interviewed by a board member before taking the job? Okay, so maybe 2/3. And that's pretty typical. So not everybody's doing it, but it's a good practice for sure. So, and the one of the reasons is, too, the fiduciary duties of the boards of directors has increased. It used to be, back in the old days, it was, being on a board of directors was, kind of a boys' club. It's like, why'd you pick that guy to be on your board of directors? Oh, he's a great guy. He's my college roommate. We get along great. So, a little harder than that these days, a little criteria. The idea, and there used to be, the boondoggle CFO meetings. How many people know what a FSC is? FSC? Ken, you were the only one last time, too. Okay, not many. It stands for Foreign Sales Corporation. So my first CFO job, we had a FSC. And at least how the FSC worked then is you could take the profit that you made from outside the United States and you'd run it through the FSC, and 15/23, which strikes me as an odd number, but it was the number, was exempt from U.S. income tax. So it was, a great opportunity. The idea is you're exporting and you're bringing down the national deficit. Well-intentioned. One of the requirements when you got to a certain size is you had to have an annual board meeting in an island. In our case, it happened to be St. Thomas. Well, again, the boondoggle mentality, we had the board meetings every year in St. Thomas, and we got 100% turnout to those meetings. But I'll tell you, when we had board meetings in Cambridge, Massachusetts in February and January, we didn't get 100% turnout. We didn't get 100% turnout of people who live locally. So, those days were kind of glorious, but they're also, a thing of the past. The boondoggles are gone. They are a relic of the bygone era. Audit committees, they need to understand the financial implications of every major transaction. And sometimes that's truthfully just not practical. Like you've all had deals. One deal I negotiated with, it was with 3Com. It was like that thick. And there's no way that an audit committee person is going to spend the time and read every single page and digest it and fully understand it. Even the audit partners struggle to do so. So they're really reliant upon you to disclose everything that's relevant and bluntly to keep them, probably not keep them out of jail, that doesn't happen too often, but at least keep them from getting sued. You need to understand the transaction and need to articulate that understanding to them and inspire confidence in them. Oop, wrong way. And some of the other advice I got too, and I learned this the hard way, but don't just meet with board members at board meetings. Meet with them one-on-one throughout the year. Board meetings are not really the time to reveal new information. They're the time to cover information that board members already know. And meet with them if you can, and sometimes the CEO might object, but then you have to ask yourself why that would be. But meet with your board members just one-on-one, without your boss, and it doesn't even have to be agenda. Just have coffee with them, meet them for breakfast, golf with them, whatever it might take. Now it's tough. If you've got board members overseas, you might not want to, fly overseas just to have coffee with them. But there's technologies, Skype or whatever. Get to know them a little bit, and more importantly, have them get some trust in you, an enhanced understanding of their business. It's great for the business. The other side of that is, if it's true that the CFO position typically turns over every 2 or 3 years, it's probably not a bad thing if the board members know you and like you and have a lot of respect for you, because they're your reference and they're very likely to place you in your next opportunity. So, and no surprises. I learned that the hard way at my first board meeting. I sent the packet of financials out the night before so that no one could read it. And I didn't talk that much during that board meeting. I mostly got yelled at. So, but I only did it once. I was only 29 then. So what did I know? So again, CFO is the most trusted person within the organization, and the board is dependent upon your integrity and your competence. And without that, they've got some serious issues. So build those relationships. So, and here's one of the fun parts, but CFOs now are expected to perform cross-functionally. You're no longer cloistered in the world of finance and accounting. So in the old school, it was CFOs just did finance and accounting, and they evaluated things after they happened, and that was fine. It doesn't work in the modern world. More recently, CFOs, and this is probably going back 20 years, even 25 years, but CFOs, they began to take on human resources, IT, facilities, investor relations. A lot of them focus as the de facto in-house counsel. How many people, by a show of hands, sort of run most, if not all of these functions within their company? Okay, fewer than I usually get, about 3/4. So, and then the new school, CFOs are involved in sales, marketing, corporate strategy, operations. There's truly very few areas that a CFO in the modern world is not at least a little bit involved in. Okay, I can do that. Yeah, and the other thing, again, this wasn't bragging, but CFOs sort of recognized that they were kind of the secret weapon. I spoke earlier that they were the best at recruiting. But they're actually the best at selling, or at least closing, because what that happens if you've got a customer that's teetering, a lot of times the CFO can go out on the sales call and basically help close them. They can stand up and say, yes, this is our company, these are our values, this is what we believe for, this is why we're going to make this an effective partnership for you. And it simply has more credibility coming from a CFO than it does from anybody else. And in fact, a few CFOs told me that they made it a point to get to know the CFOs of, I'm trying to think what she said. She said she knew all of the CFOs of her 10 biggest customers. And she was comfortable just calling them once in a while. Hey, how you doing? You guys happy? You being treated well? Anything we can do for you? No sales pitch at all, but just checking in, just in the name of relationship building. So do that. Get to know your customers. It's, you're probably not going to call engineers or whatever, but call your peer at the other company. Get to know him or her. So it'll pay dividends for you and for your companies. So, and then the other one, maintain financial expertise. So the prime directive of the CFO is to provide accurate and timely financial information. So who here is a Star Trek fan? Okay, a few of you. So I threw that Prime Directive reference in for you guys, so if you were wondering. So, but that's the name of the game. You can do all these other wonderful things well, but if you're screwing up the financial statements, it kind of doesn't matter. So, 2016 saw a record number of financial statement restatements for public companies, which broke the record set in 2015. And in 2015, broke the record set in 2014. And that broke the record set in 2013. And then I got bored. So now I know, Ed, you like it because it's more fees for you, right? I know every time we want an audit, it's like, let's hope there's some misstatements. So I kid. Ed never said that, to be clear. But obviously we have a problem, right? While it's great that you're more strategic and you're working cross-functionally and doing all these other things, fundamentally you're responsible for financial statements. And, you're responsible for it. Now, yeah, thank you. Yeah. I had a boss, in fact, it was the CFO, but he did not want to, he just used to say, it was his boss actually, he used to say GAAP is crap. And he did not want GAAP financial statements. He had no use for things like depreciation or whatever. And yeah, GAAP is crap, that was his thing. He's retired writing poetry somewhere, I'm pretty sure. So just a natural poet. But GAAP has some problems and limitations, and bluntly, people who are outside the world of finance and accounting have a little trouble understanding it. Nevertheless, it's the law of the land, and we're responsible as CFOs for putting together financial statements that are in compliance with generally accepted accounting principles. So KPIs are certainly more meaningful to non-financial types, and you are encouraged to use those as a supplemental data to GAAP, by all means. So, in fact, depending upon the audience, you might use them instead of GAAP. So, and never forget, F is for financial. That's your main job, and that's good enough for me. So that's a Cookie Monster reference, people. So Star Trek and the Cookie Monster in the same slide. So, okay, remember when I told you about I wanted a picture of somebody the same age as me? Apparently, I was born sometime around 1810 or something like that. But honest Abe, I guess he's a good person to provide ethical leadership. So, but it's in the CFOs, it's not in your DNA to lie. If you were dishonest people, you would have picked a different profession. You would have done what I did and go into sales and marketing for a living. So, oh, is that out loud? No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. So, but it's not in the DNA of a CFO to lie, but that's not good enough. A commitment to ethics goes above and beyond not just lying. You have to just fully and accurately disclose all financial statements to all relevant parties, and you have to evaluate the needs of all the constituencies, stockholders, investors, clients, employees, suppliers, and depending upon what your company does for a living, society as a whole. And you need to create a culture of ethics and make sure that your team is sticking to that and living it every single day of their lives. And you're the most ethical person in the organization, or at least you're expected to be. And for that reason, you have to always adhere to a very strict standard of ethics, even when it's inconvenient. I might even say especially when it's inconvenient. So if it's seen that the CFO, geez, we're having a bad quarter, so why don't we, I want to say these shipped on June 31st or something like that, which I've seen some salespeople try to do. A July 1st sale is June 31st. If you're seeing someone who will compromise on that sort of an issue, then other people are saying, well, maybe ethics is just lip service. Maybe we only can be ethical when things are going good, but when we really need to be, we can take some ethical shortcuts. So you need to create the ethical culture all the time and live it and breathe it every day that you're working there. So you need to demonstrate unquestioned ethics every day of your life. So it's hard to live up to, but we'll do the best we can on that. So, and we're doing great for time. So how about that? So Kristen told me, don't be as long-winded as you normally are. So, I didn't hear that. Do I want to? Oh, okay. Just as well. So. Okay, so the final habit, which I found to be perhaps the most interesting, was to maintain work-life balance. So there's a lot of research that will support it, but workaholics are not the best long-term performers. We all have our moments where we have to work 80, 90 hours a week to get something done because there's a disaster or an unforeseen deadline or an unforeseen commitment, whatever it might be. But as a lifestyle, that's a big, big mistake. There's a very strong correlation between physical exercise and success for executives. It's actually fairly interesting how important that is. And in fact, I'm not talking about doing things like training for an Ironman triathlon or CrossFit or anything like that. But if you can just find 30 to 45 minutes a day, 6 or 7 days a week to get some exercise in, you'll actually, with the increased energy and just all the mental benefits that come along with exercise, you'll actually find yourself, more effective in your job. As I mentioned yesterday, we had a conversation on this, and even the presidents of the United States, they've always taken vacation and they found time to exercise. And earliest memories, Jack Kennedy of going sailing and playing frisbee down Cape Cod with his family. He was president of the United States, a really busy guy. He found time to do those sorts of things. So should you. And imagine how busy Trump is with all that tweeting. So, but he doesn't spell check, so that probably saves some time. So also, I said I wouldn't get political. CFOs read quite a bit, which didn't surprise me, but I figured they probably read a lot of business books, and they do. But they read, they're extremely well read outside the business world. They read a lot of fiction, a lot of biography, and a lot of history. So, and they find it really important. Is Joe Falcao didn't make it tonight, right?
He's on the web.
Oh, he's on the web. Hi, Joe. Anyway, a couple of years ago, I was actually, Joe and I are close. He's actually the original steering committee along with Joyce Bell. So we were talking. So Joe reads quite a bit, and he challenged me to read a little bit more. And I was really proud. One year I read 12 books, and it's like, in your face, Joe Falcao. And he read like 35. And it's like, ooh, geez. And, I read the 12 books. I read like 4 of them the week between Christmas Eve and New Year's so that I could impress Joe. So, but make some time to read. Again, business books are great. I'm currently reading a good one where we're all reading it together, right, Kristen, about platform companies. It's interesting. But, I'd previously read some fiction, and it'll actually help clear your mind a little bit from the clutter, and that's all important. Make time for family, friends, vacations, community service, whatever makes you happy. If you have a boss that, a friend of mine, he told me that his boss came 3 days before his wedding day that he could get married. Gee, thanks, you think? But he had to cancel his honeymoon. And it wasn't like a disaster, it was just like a moderate blip. And he said he did the right thing. He said, okay, I canceled my honeymoon, but got the company through the blip, and then I quit my job and took a proper honeymoon later. If you're working for a company where, you're expecting employees to not take their honeymoons and to cancel vacations, rethink where you're working. And I'm not talking about when it's a legitimate emergency. Sometimes you got to do what you got to do. But it's just, geez, it's busy, so you can't take a vacation. Don't put up with that. The vacation's important. They'll make you more effective at your job. So by show of hands, how many people do any type of community service as well? And that would include like being on your alumni board or something like that. So, okay, cool. I noticed a couple of people on our board did not raise their hands. So, but cool. But that's an important thing too, to give back. As executives, we're very lucky and fortunate. So if we can give back to society in a meaningful way, that's fantastic. So it's challenging in the short term, obviously, to do all of these things. But it's imperative in the long term that you find room for non-work related activities. And if you won't do it for yourself and you won't do it for your family, then do it for your company, because you'll actually be a better, happier worker in the long run if you're doing it. So that said, those are the 10 habits, and we are cruising right along. This is the part that I'd like to make interactive if at all possible. Sort of, what's a plan to become a highly effective CFO? And how many people in this room are not a CFO but think you've got a good shot at becoming a CFO in your next opportunity? Okay, not too many. And how many people are a CFO early in their career? Say this is your first time CFO and it's only been a year or two. Okay, so a decent number. But so some of the veterans, let's help them out, what you've learned, what lessons you've learned, what wisdom you can share, and see if they can become as effective as you have been in your careers. So, but there we go. So how to become a highly effective CFO. And these are some of the things I've learned from these conversations. The first one is walk the floor. Does everyone know what that means? Yeah, young people don't always, but back once upon a time, we used to manufacture things in this country. I sound like my dad, so. Actually, I was looking at a picture of myself, and around my 30s, you sort of realize, geez, I'm beginning to look like my dad, and you deal with that. Then I looked at a recent picture of myself, I realized I look like my granddad. Jesus. So anyway, for the few of you who don't exactly know what walk the floor is, it's sort of an analogy in a manufacturing environment to get out from behind the desk and actually walk around the plant, see how the sausage is made, see how your product is built, learn from that process as best you can. Talk to people, not executives, but people who actually are involved in the process of creating your product. If you work in software, talk to some of the engineers, get to know what they do, what their challenges are, how you can help them. So seek non-financial roles internally. That can be, working on customer acquisition, which I think is the new age way of saying sales. Working on the help desk, getting involved with marketing and recruiting. Show of hands, how many people saw the movie The Intern with Anne Hathaway and Robert De Niro? Oh, good. Good movie. Those of you who haven't seen it, it's good. I like them both, and they're both really good in that movie. But Anne Hathaway, her character was the founder of an internet-based company, sales company. And to prepare for that role, Hathaway followed around another female executive who had gone through a similar experience. She launched a company that grew to the hundreds of millions. So she shadowed this person to learn from this person and see what it would be like. And one of the things that she learned was this company founder, she spent 4 hours every week, a half a day every week, no matter how busy she got, sitting on the customer support line, talking to customers, the people who actually bought the product. Why'd you pick it? What was the shopping experience like? Was our delivery good? What could we have done better? Were you happy with the product? Was it advertised? She just found, talking to the people every day who actually used the product, she found invaluable. And she did that, throughout her tenure as the CEO of the company. And I believe that was the opening scene of the movie. Anne Hathaway was on the customer support desk. I think they were like bridal gowns that were sent to Seattle when they were supposed to go to Portland or something like that. But, it's a good lesson to be learned there. Maybe probably if you work for NASA, it's not a good idea that you'd be on the support line. But if you work in a company that you could reasonably offer support to your customers, maybe do that a couple of hours a week. Go on sales calls. So, and the other, we recommend joining 2 professional organizations. The CFO Leadership Council or a group like it. Boston is fortunate to have several great groups, including the ones represented here. Find one that is right for you. It's got the culture you want, it has the focus on programs you want, and it's just people that you want to network with. But we're really lucky. I go to all of our chapters, and bluntly, this probably couldn't happen in most other cities where all of the CFOs from groups across the country can come and hang out together. There's just these stupid little rivalries between groups. But some of my best friends but they're members of FEI or the Treasurers Club and some other groups, and they're fantastic groups. So I recommend, if we're not right for you, I recommend that you join one of the other groups. There's a lot of good ones here tonight. And if you can, maybe think about joining a non-financial group. My personal favorite non-financial group is the National Association of Corporate Directors. Fantastic programs. They have some great speakers, and it's very high level. So the other side of that is, if at some point you're looking for a position, those are the people that are likely to hire you. So if you have those relationships day one, it's great. And Matt Budd counsels people. Where are you again, Matt? Thank you. So you've given me a lot of advice over the years, but some of the early advice you gave me is you're not looking for, when you're employed, you're not employed, you're between job searches. And if you weren't here, I would be taking that as my own. Yeah, you're between searches, so always be networking, and that's a great opportunity to network with some high-level people. But join some professional organizations, expand your skill set, expand your network, and whatnot. So, and also, this is a more challenging one for some of you, but join a corporate board. It's an invaluable thing to do. In fact, it's so invaluable, there are a lot of companies actually require their executives to join a corporate board, not of a competitor, but of an affiliate company. One such company, CVS, for example, they actually, if you become an executive, and they're defining like the top 8 or 10 officers, each one of them is expected to be on a board of a company. It might be with a customer or something like that. And they find that the time that the CFO, whomever, spends away from the office, it more than pays for itself because of the skills that they learn and the relationships that they develop. So, try to get yourself on a corporate board. And right now, we live in a great time. There's a couple of dynamics going on. There's a pretty limited number of people who are actually qualified to serve on audit committees. So CFOs, for the most part, are actually qualified to serve on public company audit committees. So your skills are invaluable. That's a fantastic segue to, to get on a board, because they do need to hire people for these roles, or comp committees. But above and beyond that, you've been developing skills beyond the world of finance and accounting and auditing that these companies are going to find invaluable, and they're beginning to recognize it. And also, there's an increased push for diversity on boards. So the CFO Leadership Council, the membership is about 35–40% female. So there are a lot of companies that have the needs for these roles on our committees or whatever. And there's a pool of amazing talent amongst female CFOs. So there's some great opportunities that are there for the asking. So try to get on a board. It's not the easiest thing to do. You might want to start off being on a nonprofit board, develop the skills and relationships, and show that you're committed to it. It's sort of tough to say my first board ever is going to be a Fortune 500 company. So, but you can get on one. I met a guy, is he here? No, I won't mention him by name. I was going to call upon him. But he got on a board, he was 31. No, I'm sorry, he was 36. And he got on a board. And how he got on, he just asked for it. He didn't ask for any money. He just wanted the experience. He was a very smart young man. He was with a venture-backed startup as a CFO. And he saw that the company invested in a company that had some similarities, apparently. But more importantly, it had a 30-year-old a CFO who was like 5 years. In fact, it might have been a controller, a lot younger than him. So he said, I'd like to be on your board on the audit committee, and I'll mentor your controller, who he'd been told had the potential to become a CFO. So, at that age, I would never even thought to have that conversation. It was pretty cool. He just said, look, I'm not even going to charge you for it. This is just something I want to do. I want to spread my rings, build my relationships, and I want to learn from the opportunity. And so, yeah, so by the time he was 40, he was actually on 2 different audit committees. So, wise guy. If you have those relationships with people that trust you and have learned to rely on you, enjoy those relationships, because that's how you get opportunities. So, and now I want to hear from some of the veterans. What did I leave out? Or was I that thorough? What advice can you give to our up-and-coming financial executives to become a highly effective CFO? And if I'm just that good, then we can start drinking. So, but we've got 8 minutes to go. So, yeah. Oh, Kristen, if people asking questions on Facebook, and ignore my high school classmates and cousins, and especially my wife. So. Yeah, if you have any questions, why don't you come to the mic? If not, then I'm going to call Pam back up for some cash and prizes. Well, some prizes. So, nobody. Okay, they're not mandatory. So, well, thank you for your attention, Pam. So.
Outstanding.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So my NetSuite buddies, what's our basket of business cards looking like? Bring those up here.
Well, we're doing that. Kristen will kill me because she only told me 37 times. But we are having a little special for anybody who wants to join the CFO Leadership Council or who wants to attend our leadership conference in May. We will give you a 10% discount on both. And if you're a member, you get 25%, so you'd actually be getting a compound if you do both. But you can go and register for both, and the password is Palooza. That was actually supposed to be a temporary name until we came up with something better, but we ended up sticking with it.
I like it.
So I understand that TV show, the 70s show, had the same thing. They couldn't come,
Palooza.
let's just call it that 70s show, and the name ended up
70s show.
sticking. So
it looks like we're continuing to get some entries. Did anybody in the back want to throw their card in the ring? We got everybody? Oh, yeah, we got a few more up here. This is awesome. This is actually, people have business cards. I'm thrilled. Oh, here we go. All right. I feel like this is a reality TV show or something. Oh, here we got one more. All right, sounds good. Why don't we start with the pass to the leadership conference?
Okay. So yeah, we're going to give off a free pass to the CFO Leadership Conference. If you've already registered, perhaps you can give it to your second in command or something like that.
There we go.
So, okay. Who do we have? It is Ken. No, there's nothing wrong with Ken, but Ken's on the board, so he can go for free anyway. So,
all right, pick another one.
Boy, this may take, we may be here a while.
I think
Yes,
Ken wants his card back in to win a Kindle Fire.
Fair point. Okay, from, I never heard of this guy, Swifton CFOs, David A. Fogel. Davey, so where are you? Woo! All right.
Yay!
Oh, you don't have to come up and claim it. Wait. Do you want to come up and make a speech?
Somebody get a camera.
No,
Let's get a picture.
Oh,
Shake his hand
yes,
and get a picture.
And you are?
Jack McCullough.
Yeah. You look familiar.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So
Very good.
we'll work something out. You can go for free in 2027. You'll be 102.
Yeah, there we go. There we go. Okay, we have 3 Kindle Fires to give away, so if you'll draw a name for the first one.
Okay. Yeah. No, we did put you back in. Okay. And Michael Umana.
Hey.
Hey. All right. Free Kindle. So.
Outstanding.
Do we have the Kindles on us? Oh, okay.
And we, during the last hour, we did pick someone from the virtual audience to win a Kindle Fire. And I think Kristen's going to help us figure out how to mail it to her. Mary Lambert from Bose.
Oh, okay.
There we go. And we have one more.
One more Kindle Fire?
Yeah.
Okay. And the winner is Paul T. Ryan of Interaction Associates. So.
All right. Congratulations. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, thank you. And thanks everyone for coming. I think that means it's cocktail hour.
Yeah, I'm really sad. I don't, I've used Palooza like 60 times a day for the next 2 months. I don't have much cause to say Palooza in my common everyday life, so I don't know what I'm going to do. In fact, Caroline, this is actually true. You wore out the P key on your keyboard, right? Yeah, we're joking that she must be typing Palooza too often. Anyway, thanks again. Goodbye to those of you on the live stream. So let's get some food and drink. Great job. So this worked out, I think. So yeah. Hey, there you are. It's great to see you, man. I'm sorry.
Everybody?
No.
Hello? Hello? Just 1 second. Jack forgot something. If you need CPE credits, please see us at the front desk and sign the sheet. Thank you.
Yeah, I saw. Yeah, you want to go around? So